up, everybody? Dan here with Dan and Sarah Makers, and thank you for joining us for another Tool Tuesday. Today we have a little bit of a special one because I am reviewing what, in my opinion, is my current favorite tool. I've had this for about a year now, and I would say this thing by far is my most favorite current tool. So what is it? It is the Makita worm drive style. I say style, and we'll get into that. 7¼ inch cordless saw. It is a 36 volt saw. It takes two of the standard 18 volt batteries, which has some positives and negatives in my opinion, but we'll talk about those also. So it takes a normal 7¼ inch circular saw blade. It's set up much like a standard skill saw, a worm drive saw. Like I said, it is not a true worm drive saw because the motor is actually in line with the blade. So it does not have a worm gear that transfers. A motor whose, if I can hold this, normally a worm drive saw has a motor that's pointed straight forward and it rotates in line with basically the body of the saw. And then it's got a worm drive gear in the housing that turns that motor turn 90 degrees into the blade. This does not. It's got a standard motor in here. It is a brushless motor, which means that it's supposed to last longer. It doesn't have the wear of the carbon brushes. And like I said, it's a 36 volt saw. It takes two 18 volt batteries. The ones that it came with, it comes with 5 amp hour batteries, or you can get just the base tool. They plug in where a normal worm drive saw would have the motor, and they just slide right in. So the thing about having two batteries is that they're small enough that they work in your conventional Makita series of tools, so your drills, your impact drivers, grinders, sawzalls, you know, and in my case the weed eater, and I also have a lawnmower. They all use the same battery. That being said, I can run pretty much any type of Makita tool I want, the 18 volt up to the 36 volt series, for pretty much the same battery. I don't have to have multiple chargers, I don't have to have multiple batteries, which is really nice. The one drawback though is that you always want to have batteries that have the same charge. So this saw here, most batteries nowadays have a charge indicator where you push a button and you get the little LED lights that tell you how much charge it has. These 36 volt, they have a separate charge indicator on the tool itself that shows you the status of both batteries. This one, batteries are all charged up. They're both showing full red bars, which is full power. So the one drawback I would say on this particular saw, it does have a really fat, wide rafter hook, which is nice. That will get you over TJI floor joists, which a normal skill saw rafter hook gets jammed on those 1¾ 2 inch floor joists. This will not. It actually is wide enough that you can get it on there. But back to the batteries. What I was saying is they are a little bit difficult to get in there and remove because they do slide in. If you've got your table or foot, so you've got maximum cutting depth, it's kind of hard to get in there and pull that battery out. So that is one drawback. Almost worth gluing, super gluing a tab or something on the back of your battery, or putting some kind of duct tape tab so you can pull it out, because that is a bit of a challenge. So we've talked about the rafter hook. The saw, it's magnesium, it's got a metal base, it's got a metal guard. All the adjustments are metal. The motor housing is magnesium also. As far as the adjustment of the base plate on this saw, we have just a standard lever at the back here, which allows the saw base plate to either rotate down to whatever depth you need, or up, obviously. It's got indications on here based on inches. So I don't know if there's a US market and maybe a European market where it would also be indicated in metric. Not sure. Don't have those saws. But it is marked out in inches. It isn't labeled in like 3/4 plywood, 2x4 material, 4x4 like some saws have on their depth of cut. I believe the newest skill saws have basically the dimensions of the type of lumber, not the actual depth of cut in inches. So one of the cool features on this saw is this base plate adjustment. There is the standard where you just loosen it up and you rotate the base plate to whatever angle you want. It has, what's interesting, it has 3 different detents that you can set it at. So with this base plate all the way flat, you have this secondary knob here, and you can rotate it in 90-degree positions to a 45-degree stop, a 53-degree stop, which gives you full angle, or you can rotate it one more time and it'll stop at 22.5 degrees, which is pretty cool. So you rotate it to whatever degree of cut, bevel cut that you want, 22.5, 45, or 53, and you know when the base plate stops, you're at that location. So that's pretty cool. There is also, much like a standard skill saw, you've got a blade lock in this location here. So you just push that down and that locks the blade. Now, as far as removing the blade, it's got both a hex nut on the outside here, a hex nut, and then there's a recess in the middle where you could use an Allen wrench. So let's grab our Dude Tool blade wrench and see if that works for our blade. All right, so we've got our little Dude Tools all-in-one blade wrench slash drill chuck key. And will it fit? Is this a standard size nut? I have not tried this yet. Yes, it is. So that is pretty cool. It's going to use your standard blade wrench, whether it's one of these Dude Tools or a skill saw blade wrench, which probably everybody's got a few of those floating around, or it can use an Allen wrench in the center. So this is the first blade I've ever used on this saw. I've had it for about a year. Done a fair amount of stuff with it. It is the Makita labeled blade. I don't know if Makita actually makes them or not, but it's still going strong, still cutting quite well. The final thing, well, a couple final things. We've got a safety on the back, so when you pick up the saw, you have to actually push this safety from either direction, so it is ambidextrous. I like that. I'm left-handed, but I've grown up using a worm drive style saw, so it doesn't bother me. But I do like the fact that I can operate that blade safety with my left hand, my thumb, just as well as a right-handed person would. The final thing now is work at heights. So that's something a lot of people probably don't worry about in non-union or non-big construction projects, but work at heights, anytime you're working over people down below, finished products, stuff like that, where you don't want to drop your tool. Everybody should not want to drop their tool. But when you do work at heights in a more commercial setting, there are requirements. So tool lanyards, things like that, these are required, and especially when you have a near miss incident, they become even more required. But on the base of the handle here, this saw has a loop built in that allows you to tie off your saw. So if you were to drop it, it's not going to fall all the way to ground and get destroyed. So that, I would say, is a really nice little feature that probably a lot of people would overlook. But if you are working at heights, you're working in a boom lift, something like that, you're cutting fascia and you slip and drop your saw, you've got it tied off. So that's a nice feature. So this has a really high RPM compared to a regular corded skill saw, so it actually technically cuts faster because your blade is rotating faster than a normal skill saw. I personally have yet to bog it down or stall it out, but we'll get some wood, we'll do some cuts, and we'll see how it goes. As far as longevity, I don't think there's a really good way to test longevity and say that this will cut X number of 2x4s, because who knows if you're cutting through the top of a bunk and all your 2x4s are lined up and you only have to pull the trigger once, start it up and start cutting and then have it end. So if you're cutting individual 2x4s, you're probably going to get fewer cuts, but then again, the saw is going to stay cooler and not going to draw as much off the batteries. So it's a real give and take. Is the wood wet? Is the blade dull or sharp? How many teeth do you have? Just all that kind of stuff. But other than that, I would say it's definitely an awesome saw when it comes to cutting. I watched the Essential Craftsman on YouTube, another YouTube channel, and he is going through a series where he's framing up a house, and they were framing the walls. And I was watching that video, and it reminded me of the mess of air hoses and extension cords run all over the tops of your walls. You're framing your walls flat, then you need to raise them up. You accidentally run a cord through in between two studs, and it gets underneath the stud and up and over and snake through, and you're constantly trying to fish cords out and hoses out. So the feature that we now have saws that are really good as cordless saws is amazing. So let's get some lumber, let's cut it up, and let's see how this thing does. All right, so we plowed through some what was very hard dunnage from some semi-load somewhere, structural steel I believe it was. Very hard, very dense wood. I was able to stall out the saw once there. Just I wasn't cutting quite straight and kind of bound the blade up crooked. It really goes. I mean, this thing, like I said, it's the original blade. It's got, you know, a few miles on it already, but it just goes and goes. It's got a really high blade speed, so it cuts quite well, which is the whole difference between a corded skill saw and a cordless skills, or at least this cordless Makita circular saw. It goes, and I would say because of those features, it's cordless, it's easy to maneuver, it's powerful, it's got interoperability with batteries that I already have. Just all around, the features, the benefits are incredible, and it's not a bad deal for the base saw itself. I think it's around $180 or so. I know that's obviously going to be different in different countries, but here in the States it is around that $180 price range. So yeah, it definitely is a good saw in my opinion. I've only done small projects with it on and off. I haven't actually done, you know, like framing projects, residential framing projects where I'm cutting and cutting and cutting. But I think I still would, you know, take the batteries home at the end of the day, charge them all up, next day, just go for it. And unless you were at a cut station where you were, you know, cutting door and window packages, this might be the way to go. So anyways, this is Dan with Dan XSR Makers. We really appreciate those of you who subscribe, thumbs up, comment, all that good stuff. That's really awesome to see that. We love seeing seeing that kind of stuff. So anyways, until next time, this is Dan. Remember to like, subscribe, share, comment, and get out there and do something.